Game leaders are brought to you by Gatorade. Some amazing individual performances in the first half of the Big Ten season. Tough to find one better than what Tyler Warren pulled off Saturday in L.A. Tied the all-time NCAA record for receptions by a tight end with 17. He snapped the ball on his touchdown catch. He completed a pass. He ran the ball once, showing off the creativity of that Andy Kotelnicki offense and the diversity of the Nittany Lions attack. One of the big stories early on this year. A ton to choose from, Ashley, but we each wanted to point out a few of the things that have stood out to us in this first 7 weeks of Big Ten football. I'm going to go first, and I'll just say, to me, it is the expansion, and the specific part of the expansion that I have loved is the venues. And you told me when we were traveling around this summer how special these venues are of the 4 new schools that were joining us. And as you know, I've followed this sport literally my entire conscious life. I went to my first Big Ten football game when I was 6 years old in 1975. I've loved it ever since. But the notion of Big Ten games being played in the Rose Bowl, in the Coliseum, at Autzen Stadium, at Husky Stadium, I knew these were great venues. Like, I understood that we were getting 4 amazing venues into the Big Ten. But to see these 4 new schools hosting some of the more traditional Big Ten teams there, to see the fan bases of these massive universities, as we know, there are Big Ten alums all over the country, to see a lot of them get to go to these venues, many for the first time, and see their teams. You told me it was going to be great. I believed you, but I think I didn't quite understand how great until I saw it. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, Dave, I co-sign with you on that, because I think that the reality is change is hard and uncertain, right? And there was so much conversation and expectation about what this new world order in the Big Ten would look like, and plenty of debate about the style of play and would these 4 new programs, what would they bring to the Big Ten? Would the West Coast schools be ready for the physicality? And with a relatively small sample size, right? I think the short answer is yes. It's been everything that you've wanted. You go strictly by the combined record of the new 4 schools. They're 6-9 in league play, which is, nothing to write home about. Part of that, of course, is an 0-4 UCLA team that's finding its way under a new head coach. But Dave, when you look at the marquee games that we've had so far in the season, Washington's win over Michigan, you look at what Oregon was able to do against Ohio State at home, those carry a ton of weight. And from the league's perspective, those are the type of matchups that you hoped for when you brought in these 4 schools. And so even USC, they have found some excruciating ways to lose games. So their fans may not agree that they're totally ready for the Big Ten. But the game against Penn State last week, that close back and forth game against Michigan and Minnesota, again, as long as you're not a Trojan fan, they have been as entertaining as we could have hoped for in the expansion era. So that is something I am with you. It's one thing to kind of think about what it might look like, but then to be able to see what it actually has become as these schools, from different parts of the country are playing each other. It's been really cool and it's been special. And it's been everything I think so far that we would have imagined it to be.
No doubt. It's been amazing. The next one for me is Indiana, and we've already touched on them a bit, but I just want to say anytime a team turns it around and follows up a bad season with a good season, it's great, and those make for really good stories. But it's different to me, Ashley, when it's Indiana, and I'll tell you why. And again, I'm not trying to pile on Indiana's history. There's reasons for all of this. But Indiana, there are 134 teams in FBS, 134 teams in Major College Football. No one has lost more games all time of those 134 than Indiana. They are the losingest program in the history of the FBS. And we're not just talking ancient history here. Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1991. Not only is that the longest drought in power conference football, so now we're just talking the power leagues. Not only is it the longest drought, it's the longest drought by 13 years. It's not even close. Everyone else has won at least one bowl since 2004. Indiana hasn't won one. They've won 3 bowl games all time. Just to give you some perspective, Northwestern. Northwestern is not a program that you think of as a powerhouse program, although obviously they've had a nice run here last 30 years or so. Northwestern's won 5 bowl games in the last 8 years. Indiana's won 3 ever. And then you get to the more recent history. Indiana was 9-27 the last 3 years. That was tied for the worst record of any power conference team. And now here they are 6-0. So it's not just that there's been a great turnaround. It's been that there's been a great turnaround at Indiana. To me, it is one of the best stories. It has a chance to be the best, honestly, that we've covered in all our time at the Big Ten Network.
Dave, this is why I love working with you, a college football historian, because I feel like you put into context just of how big of a deal this is going to be. And I don't want to just say cosign on all of the things that have stood out to you so far, but yes, Indiana has been the surprise story, and it's been phenomenal to watch a fan base completely re-energized. And I've loved watching Curt Cignetti stroll into Bloomington with all that bravado. And so far, they have completely backed it up. And I think it shows you just how quickly a coach can fully reset the culture. And I wonder if other ADs in the country are paying attention, because in a world where everyone seemingly wants to go out, and this is true in the NFL too, and find the hot young coordinator, Scott Dolson made a somewhat out-of-the-box hire by bringing in Cignetti, and you look at what it's done. He's got a ton of experience at every level, but specifically, and as anyone who has Googled him knows, he has won everywhere he has been. And the way that he went about building his roster, like he went and he got proven production over potential. All those guys from James Madison, as well as guys like Curtis Rourke, who have performed well at lower levels, and it is working. So I just wonder if Curt Cignetti's, the Curt Cignettis of the world, guys who have spent a lot of time at lower divisions and are proven winners, will become more of a blueprint for athletic directors moving forward. But I'm with you. Hands down, the Hoosiers are the story of the first half of the season. I even had a friend of mine come and deliver an IU helmet so that she said, you don't have enough Indian Hoosier in your background. So now I have, shout out to you, Marissa. Thank you for my IU helmet. But it's cool to see, and it's fun to see a fan base totally re-energized.
It's awesome. And he's not the only one from lower levels, as you know, right? Lance Leipold, obviously, he's done it, Kalen DeBoer. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, when I saw his resume, I kind of thought to myself, well, just because you can win at Indiana, Pennsylvania, doesn't mean you can win at Indiana of Indiana.
Right.
Like, it's a different deal. I was talking to Scott Dolson when we were there for practice, the great athletic director, and he was telling me, I had a checklist of all the things I wanted in a coach, and he checked every box. I would say there are probably a lot of ADs who want to know Scott Dolson's checklist now. It's proprietary. I can't give that away, but there might be some calling him in the offseason. The last one I'm going to go with is the Northwestern temporary stadium. I just think it's so cool. It's really beautiful, and it shows off what is one of the prettiest settings for any college campus in America. But I just give them a ton of credit for getting to this point. I mean, there was truly nowhere else, Ashley, that was acceptable for them to play. They couldn't use the baseball stadiums until November because, the White Sox couldn't ensure them that they would be able to use their field because they might be in the World Series. Soldier Field was a no-go because of the turf problems there. There's a soccer stadium an hour from campus. That was probably the place they would have ended up playing. That would not have been great given Chicago traffic, given where their fan base is. It's really a great solution. I give them a ton of credit for making it first class. Like, if you go to a game there, the experience is really, really neat. But again, you're kind of given lemons. You make lemonade out of it. They're going to have an amazing stadium in a couple of years. Obviously, you spend $800 million on a stadium. It better be nice. But for these 2 years, this is really a great solution. And kudos to everyone in Evanston for making it happen.
I'm with you. Even looking at those aerial pictures, like I could just sit and look. I want that to be my screensaver. Like, it is beautiful, and kudos to everybody that was able to make that happen. And they've got one more game there at least this season, and then obviously next year. I wish they could make it a more permanent thing, but I obviously know nothing about all of that. The last thing I'll say, just to add on before we move on, Dave, is, to me, one other thing that has stood out is Jeremiah Smith. That young man at Ohio State. Every now and then in our jobs, you realize how lucky you are to watch and cover a generational talent, and that is Jeremiah Smith. Will Howard, in his interview with you last week, I think he said it best. He said he's a mistake eraser. he makes the quarterback right. And there is nothing about him, like when you watch these catches, that tell you he's 18 years old. Like, how high is the ceiling? You've got 32 catches for 553 yards and 7 touchdowns in your first 6 college football games. Like, he is must-see TV. And again, one of those players that you just feel lucky that you get to cover in your career, because he's got a lot of specialness ahead. But just enjoy it while you get to watch it every single weekend.
With you 100%. And the fact that we get to watch him for at least 3 years, I'm guessing it might just be 3. I'm
Might just be.
I'm thinking after that he might make the jump. But I'm with you. He is a special, special talent. Been a ton of fun to watch.